So here we are talking with Ted Kirkendall today for FindaGuitarTeacher.com. Ted, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure. It's good to be here.
Absolutely. So tell us first, where do you teach? What part of the country do you teach in, and what part of the city that you're in?
I'm in the heart of the Midwest, Indianapolis, Indiana,
Mm-hmm.
specifically the neighborhood of Broad Ripple. It's kind of an artsy part of Indianapolis.
Uh-huh. That's great. And do you teach in students' homes, or do your students come to you, or is it a combination of both?
It's a little of both.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I try to get them to come here as much as possible, but I'm happy to drive to somebody's home if need be.
And do you find that you teach more children or more adults, or is it kind of a mix of both, or what's your experience with that?
Well, it's always been quite a mix, but
Mm-hmm.
certainly children, more children than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Probably 12 and under.
And how young do you start teaching? How young are your youngest
I've got
students?
a 5-year-old right now, and
Uh-huh.
that's going very well. She's quite advanced.
That's great. And what's the general climate for guitar lessons where you are? Do you find a lot of people want to learn to play guitar in your area?
It's gotten a little tough in the last few years, really. Probably 5 years ago, it was really booming, and
Interesting.
not so much anymore.
Understood. And what do you find are the kind of most common styles that people request to learn?
Mostly rock, but definitely some blues and some country. You know, the odd metal type. That was more back in the 80s. There were
Yes,
heavy and metal students in the 80s.
makes sense. And what are some of the other styles that you offer?
I teach pretty much any Western style of music.
Hmm.
I don't do much classical. I can get people started, but that's such a specific technique that I don't really, I send them on to somebody who really is involved in that.
Understood. And can you tell us what are your fees and what's your scheduling format? How do you like to set up your lessons with students?
Typically, it's once a week for a 30-minute lesson. I do have some students that take an hour,
Hmm.
and some that will come, like especially with adults. Some of them might come, whenever they can. So,
Hmm.
but for the most part, it's 30 minutes for every week.
Understood. And in just kind of simple terms, could you tell us a little bit about your teaching approach? What do you tend to focus on with students?
Sure. Really, every student is different, but I want to make sure everybody has the basics, that they're using the proper technique, especially if it's somebody that's already been playing. I want to make sure that no bad habits have been developed. With kids, usually 12 and under, I get them started reading music. And as you get into your teen years, your people, they tend to be a little less enthusiastic about reading, Ode to Joy and
Hmm.
Twinkle Little Star, etc. And for the more, I don't know, serious students, maybe some music theory, some improvisation. But I try to give them what they want, really, in addition to what I feel they need.
Makes sense. And can you tell us a little bit about the equipment that you use when you teach and about your guitars? Do you own a bass? What kind of recording equipment do you use if you do that?
I do some recording. I use I have a home studio with my laptop and Cubase software.
Hmm.
As far as different instruments, mostly it's either acoustic or electric guitar. I do take bass students as well. It's all really high-end stuff. I'm a professional, working musician, so it's all high quality.
Do you have a favorite guitar that you like to use?
I do. I have it's a G&L, which is Leo Fender's last company before he left us, and it's in the style of a Telecaster.
Understood. And do you offer guidance to your students about their purchases of their own gear, and what can you tell us about that?
Well, I certainly do if they ask. I'm more than happy to give advice, and you do tend to get the question, what's the best guitar or what's the best amp? And that's impossible to answer, especially in these days. There's so much out there, and it's really good stuff. It's getting cheaper all the time, which is unusual. But so there's just so much. I can tell them, what I use. I can suggest, certain things to stay away from, probably more than, what to look for. I think that's more important because, a more of a beginning student would really have no idea what they might be looking for.
Understood. Well, Ted, thank you so much for talking to us about your teaching today. It's been great to hear about it.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you very much.